Welcome to the Outdoor Adventure Lifestyle Podcast, where we dive into inspiring stories, thrilling adventures, and expert insights from leaders and legends across the outdoor adventure community. Whether you're an avid hiker, passionate camper, or adventure traveler, each episode brings you up close and personal with guests who've lived it, explored it, and made it their mission to share their experiences with you. Let's get after it. Hey folks, we're back with Sergio today, talking about photo tips on how to get great photos in the outdoor space. Today we're going to talk a little bit about gear. What's in Sergio's pack? The theme, I think, is you probably want to keep your setup lean, reliable, and ready for rugged travel, right? Some of the stuff that we carry in camera bags is heavy, bulky. Let's talk about that first. How do you keep your stuff clean, reliable, set up, ready to go?
That's always been kind of like the big issue with photographers. We tend to like to have all the different lens options because all these particular situations, from super wide, like a 15 rectilinear, to a 300 or a 600 or something. And sometimes you have the luxury of taking the stuff with you in a vehicle, or maybe you have a porter or maybe an animal that can take your stuff to X location. But when you're humping it all, if you have to take your own camera gear, including tripod, maybe some foul weather gear, like a rain jacket and maybe a sweater and some water and some snacks or something, a little first aid kit, you still have to have your core equipment. So over the years, I basically have gone from taking a backpack with 6 or 7 lenses and one camera to going now with 2 cameras and 2 lenses. That's generally how I go. So one camera has a wide to short telephoto, 24-70-2.8 or a 24-105 or a 28-75. I always try to go with 2.8 lenses if I can, fast lenses.
Yep.
There's some 24-105s that are f4. With today's technology, with the sensors that one uses, you can bypass the f4 aspect and shoot at a higher ISO by one stop, and then you'll be good. Like, for example, like the Canon 24-105 f4 is an excellent lens, but it's still an f4, so it doesn't gather as much light, and it won't be able to gather like an f2.8. But if you jack up your ISO, you can almost compensate for that. But it's saying, yeah, you can, but it's not really the same thing. But
It's not ideal. Yeah.
But 24-105 covers a lot of territory. I have a Sigma 24-70 2.8 that I've got for a mirrorless Canon body that I'm using, the R6 Mark II, which is a superb lens. It's relatively small, super sharp, fast, and it's outstanding. So that goes on one camera body. The other lens is a 70-200 2.8 on another digital camera body, and that takes care of my long end needs. I do have a 1.4 converter that I would put on a 70-200, but I rarely use it because I just find myself like I can get probably 95% of what I need with those 2 lenses. From a 24-70, 70-210, I'm there. I have most of what I need, and if I need to zoom in or zoom out, I zoom in or zoom out with my feet. I walk to or I walk from to get what I need. And if it's too wide of a shot, then I'll stack some photos and do a pano and overlap them, and then I'll stitch them together. You can do that on a horizontal format, or you can put the camera vertically and shoot. Instead of shooting 3 panos overlapping, you can shoot 6 panos overlapping. So you have a lot more real estate on the bottom and on top. But you have to let the computer obviously stitch it together. And the computer, the software nowadays is just fantastic. You can handle it.
Yeah.
And 70-200 gets me to most of my things, but I also have a Tamron 150-600, which is not the fastest lens in the world, but it does, if you know how to use it and you can shoot a high enough shutter speed and you have a proper aperture, you can get some killer photos. There's photos that I can get with a 600 millimeter lens because of how I shoot landscapes with that versus a 200 that are not even comparable.
Wow, really interesting.
Yeah, so I tend to shoot landscapes with telephoto lenses, not wide angle lenses most of the time. That's how my vision tends to work.
Yeah, and you stitch them together?
No, I look at it like a surgeon. I look at a scene with a telephoto lens, and all I do is I just think like it's a scalpel. I'm going to cut out the photo out of the scene that I want.
Gotcha.
With at 200 millimeters.
Gotcha.
That's the piece of this big picture that I want, and then I'll shoot variations of it until I find the variation that I like the best. How do I know what's going to be my best variation? I shoot lots of different compositions
Yeah.
with that lens, and then I compare it when I'm back at the computer. I compare it. That's the composition for this shot. This is what I wanted to get. But I could shoot, let's say, 12 photos, and six of them are going to throwaways, and then I have six left. Out of those six left, there's maybe some slight variances between here and there, or what I included, or what my framing was. But then I just kept on to the one. I kept the ones I liked,
Yeah.
and it worked fine. So I got the photo that I wanted.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't do that enough. I know when I was doing a lot of shooting, one of the buddies that I would travel around with, he would only take 4 or 5 of the scene, and I'm over there shooting 12, 15 of the scene. And I think it's not film anymore, so you're not
Yeah,
spending money, so to speak,
exactly.
and it
Yeah.
gives you a lot more options in Lightroom or wherever you're editing later.
Yeah. So that's the one difference I was going to mention between people who learn how to shoot on film and
Mm.
people who never shot on film and only shot on digital. You have no concept of what it was to have a roll that only had 36 shots. And if you're lucky, maybe you got a 37th shot out of it. But that's what you had, and you had to have enough rolls with you to shoot what you needed. Now you have these cards that are like a terabyte. You can shoot thousands of photos and not
Right,
worry about running out of space. Even if you shoot to two cards, in some cameras you can shoot to both cards at the same time,
right.
and you have your immediate backup, and you can shoot thousands. That's a double-edged sword. Shooting hundreds of photos that you have to edit through is also not recommended, not in my view. I already know the photo that I want, and then I just shoot what I'm looking for. I'm not shooting photos just in case. I look at the scene and say, okay, I know that I'm going to shoot this photo with a telephoto lens, or I know I'm going to shoot this photo with a wide angle, and I get the shots that I want. Now, I could shoot the same scene with a telephoto and a wide angle and get two completely different photos of the
Mm-hmm.
same thing at the same time. So I will cover myself with that. So I'll shoot with
Do
my
you make a
wide.
list? Do you have a list with you before you
I
go?
don't have a list
Mental
per
list thing?
se. I'm a proactive thinker of what I want to photograph. I'm also a reactive
Mm.
shooter of what I
Mm.
want to photograph. If I see something,
What it
oh
gives you,
man,
you shoot it. Yeah.
we got to do this. Like, for example, you're driving across, I don't know, the Altiplano, and then all of a sudden you go around a corner, and then all of a sudden you see the sun is setting, you have a couple of volcanoes and lightning's coming through, and all of a sudden, like a pack of llamas show up because they're going from their their areas where they're eating and they're heading back to their corral. And
Uh-huh.
there's no way in the world that you could have predicted that was going to happen. And then you just stop and you go and shoot that thing as best as you can, trying to come up with one photo
Yeah.
that tells the whole story. So that kind of stuff is important.
And
So
what are some of your go-to support gear, like tripods and filters? Obviously, you use tripods. Do you use a lot of filters?
yeah, I tend to use tripods, and I have different brands that I've used. I've
Mm-hmm.
used Gitsos and Benros and Manfrottos and a bunch of other different brands. I look at tripods as it needs to be big enough that I can put a big lens on it, but not so big that only is suitable for a big lens. So it has
Right,
to be
right.
the right size. Now, I do have travel tripods that will give me the ability to shoot big lenses and my wide angle lenses, but I
Mm.
try to keep the size of my tripods small, on the smaller side. So instead of choosing, for example, a three-legged tripod, and then where it's three sections, because all tripods are three legs, that's why I call it tripod. I'm talking about sections.
Right.
Three sections versus four sections. The four sections, you can usually get smaller sized tripods because you're dealing in smaller segments. So those can be packed away in a bag, or they're not so obtrusive that they're really getting in the way. And I usually use some sort of ball head, and I
Mm-hmm.
use the Arca Swiss quick release system for all my cameras and all my
Mm-hmm.
lenses, that I put a plate on every single one of them. And I take a couple of extra plates with me in my camera bags, and just some basic tools, like those little tools that are for bikes that are multi-tools. You
Right.
get some of those and just toss one of those inside your bag, and you've got all things covered. As far as filters, I don't use any filters at all. I
Mm,
don't even
okay.
use any kind of filters to protect the front element.
Interesting.
Shades, my sun shades are what protect my front element. And I've only had one instance in which I scratched the front element over, 40 some odd years that I've been shooting, in which
Wow.
I wish I would have had a filter.
Mm.
And one time I broke a polarizer. It was an expensive circular polarizer back in the day. That was expensive. And one time I scratched the rear element. And the rear element is really the key to whether you screwed up your lens. The rear element's the one you
Yeah,
need to
right.
protect, not so
Mhm.
much the front element.
Right.
But overall, I don't use filters. But if I did use filters, it'd be a circular polarizer or a neutral density polarizer that can be graduated. That way you can shoot some of the slow-mo stuff or cascading waterfall and you get that milky effect, or there's too much light and you need to cut it down, and whatever reason you may need that. But for the most part, I tend to use the built-in software like that Lightroom has, graduated ND or something like
Mhm.
that, because I don't really want to be carrying a bunch of glass filters with me. I have them. I
Mhm.
haven't used them in years. They have their place, but I found that I don't need to really take them with me because I get the same effect by using the software.
The software is amazing these days too. Lightroom is just
Oof,
phenomenal. You
it's
know.
crazy, man.
Yeah.
And some of the other software like Topaz is an amazing
Mm-hmm.
software that, holy cow, I've taken some photos that, okay, it's sharp enough. I wish it would have been sharper.
Mm-hmm.
You grab your RAW and put it into the Topaz filtering system, and then you choose your settings, and it gives you an amazing RAW file that is very sharp, and there's no artificial anything in it. You have to learn how to use the tool, but
Always, yeah.
phew, Topaz is excellent.
I don't
And
have
there's
that one. I'll have to check that
DxO,
out.
which is
Yeah.
another software which is also excellent. That one does a superb job as well.
What
Those
was that
two,
one again?
DxO,
DxO. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, those two are, man, with those two things, and even some of the stuff in built in to Photoshop
Right.
or Lightroom,
Mm-hmm.
their stuff is pretty killer, man.
Pretty
There's
phenomenal.
you
Pretty
can't go
phenomenal.
wrong with that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I would recommend. The one I mentioned is DxO Pure Raw. That's the one.
Okay.
DxO Pure Raw is the one. The other one is Topaz Labs,
Yeah, I've
and
heard
you
of
have
that. Yeah.
Topaz. You also have Topaz Gigapixel, which can enlarge your photos without them looking like crap. So they have, and then there's, I believe there's I forget which one it is. One of these two programs has a kind of a kit in which you can do black and white conversions
Oh, wow. Yeah.
with
Yeah.
superb control,
Yeah.
and you can come up with some beautiful black and whites.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, for people who are into the black and white thing.
Awesome. There's so many tools these days. They're getting better and better all the time.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
What about some lightweight hacks? What do you do to save weight and stay nimble without sacrificing quality? Because you got to be able to move fast sometimes when light's changing.
Yeah, the way I do it, I either take like a lightweight bag. I'm using the brand F-Stop Gear. Their
Yeah, I know those
backpacks
guys.
and
Yeah.
their small bags and their teeny bags that can take one camera and maybe a couple of lenses. First of all, the design is excellent. The quality is top notch. And I find them to be very robust. They don't have a whole bunch of extra anything built
Right.
into them,
That's what I love about them. Yeah, they're
which I like.
really
There's
clean.
some
Yeah.
other camera manufacturers that are well known that have way too much padding and they take up a lot of room.
Yep. And
And
they get
then
heavy. Yeah. Yeah.
obviously, even if it's soft padding, whatever, it takes up too much room and it does tend to add up on the weight. But I
Mm-hmm.
find the f-stop gear to be superb. And I've been
Mm-hmm.
traveling with those things for the past 3 years.
Okay. Cool.
And I've been to South America countless times and into the jungle and the Andes and the Altiplano in vehicles. I even had one of my backpacks strapped onto a burro that took it over to the base camp for it was like a 5 or 6 hour trek and whatever. Everything arrived perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And they have lots of gadgets that can help you strap on a tripod, and you can put in a hydration bladder in there, or they have enough room for a jacket and some other things. And
Yeah.
the organization is good. Zippers are killer. Sewing is excellent. They're using this super lightweight material. I forget what it's called. Really superb, semi-waterproof, most of the stuff. They have waterproof bags or the waterproof
Covers and stuff.
covers that you can put on it.
Yeah.
That's my go-to brand. And you just choose the size that you need.
Mm-hmm.
And they have these ultra lightweight versions that you have these ICUs, which are these little like boxes, soft boxes that are padded, and you put in your camera gear and you can pull them out from one bag and stick it into the other.
Right.
They're
Right.
not
Right.
permanent. And those that I can even grab one of those because they have zippers and they close up completely. You can
Right.
put that inside of a backpack if you need to.
Yep.
Or you can have it if you're in a vehicle and you want your backpack out of the way, but you want your lenses, you can just take that sucker out and put it on the floor and then you have your stuff right near you, all protected.
Yeah.
Easy. It has a carry handle.
Yeah,
So
these camera guys have really taken the organization, pack organization to another level, right? I remember
yeah,
back in the day, it was just a pack with all these basically walls that you could move around.
yes,
But now they've got things specifically designed for this camera, that camera, two
yes.
luggages, two bodies, whatever.
Yeah, and they've
Yeah.
thought about you need besides the camera gear, you need the other stuff. You need some,
Right.
you need a snack, you need maybe a first aid kit, maybe a few little tools, maybe some lens cleaner and this and that or whatever, maybe a compass, a headlamp, a lightweight pair of gloves or something, whatever it is that you need, and
Yeah.
you can stick it into the pack because there's plenty of room sometimes, or you can strap it on. They have a nice series of straps that they use that you can put on and take off very quickly. They're not permanent, and so
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
strap it to the top of the pack, to the side of the pack, to the back of the pack. So
Cool
it's very
stuff. Yeah.
well designed.
Thanks, Sergio. It's been great talking to you again. We'll talk next week about composing in wild spaces, framing like a pro.
All right. Good talking with you. Take care,
All right.
Rick.
Thanks. Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Outdoor Adventure Lifestyle Podcast. Be sure to visit our website, ricksays.com, where you'll find show notes and links to everything we talked about and more. And while you're at it, if you found value in this show, give us a rating on Apple Podcast or spread the word and tell a friend. That would really help us out too. Be sure to tune in every week, and thanks again for listening to the Outdoor Adventure Lifestyle Podcast.